Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you have an awesome day today. If you're here, I'm assuming you're trying to get your PMP certification knocked out. I started my journey towards that back in January, and I tested in April and passed. So altogether it took about 3 months from deciding I want to do it to studying, taking the exam, and passing. So it doesn't take that long if you really commit to it and study hard. So in this video I'm going to talk about eligibility, the application process, the actual application itself, plus some of my own experience examples that you guys can use and modify. The audit process, if you're lucky enough to be selected for audit like I was, we'll talk about that and how to get through it. The studying, testing, and then maintaining your certification. So first, eligibility. There's really two paths, and it's based on your education level. If you have a bachelor's degree, you need 4,500 hours of project management experience leading or directing projects. This needs to be over a 3-year period. This doesn't have to be consecutive, but it cannot be overlapping. So if you have 2 projects that you're claiming as far as the hours goes, if it overlaps, it doesn't count for twice the time. And then you need 35 hours of project management experience. If you have an associate's or a high school diploma or a GED, you need 7,500 hours leading and directing projects. This needs to be over the course of 5 years. Again, can't be overlapping time, and it does not have to be consecutive. And same thing, you need 35 hours of project management education. So let's talk about the education real quick. So this is PMI.org. This is kind of where you go to schedule, get your test, apply, and all that stuff. So what kind of education are they looking for? It could be through a university or a specialized course in project management. And then they have a list of approved courses. I'll show you that in a second. But basically the topics need to be consistent with the PMP exam content. And it just has anything to do with project management, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling projects, or closing projects. And then, all of those phases include all kinds of things like quality, risk, scope, cost, schedule, managing people, leading. There's a whole resources. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that. So anything related to project management will probably count towards your application hours. If you don't have any of those hours knocked out or you're short, you can go to PMI online courses and look through the catalog, and you can actually look through. Some of these courses are a little bit pricey though, like $750. And then you can search by PMP specific. So again, you need 35 hours, contact hours of project management education. These ones are a little pricey, so the one that I actually use and that I recommend is called Velociteach. And the actual one that I did was Pass the PMP 6th edition exam. So it depends how fast you want to go through it. It's about $200. You can knock out the actual 35-hour course in a month easily. So if you just get a month access, it's $200, which isn't that bad. A couple expenses to get your PMP, the educational piece if you don't have it already, and then actual test cost is about $500. So altogether, around $700 or $800 to get your PMP certification. But well worth it, because if you've done your research, you know that anyone with a PMP averages about an extra 20 grand a year on top of another project manager that doesn't have a PMP. So it's definitely worth your time to study, take the test, and get that certification. So again, this is probably my favorite one. It's really not that expensive. I'll put a link to it in the description if you guys are interested, if you don't have the 35 contact hours yet. So let's go back. Oh, actually, before I do that, I want to show you specifically, here's your hours that you need. But keywords again, leading and directing projects. If you just say that you supported a project or that you were in some kind of role where you're just helping, that's not gonna fly. You need to have been leading or directing or managing the project. So that's important when you do your application. Make sure you put that on there. All right. So once you determine if you're eligible or not, next thing you need to do is register at PMI.org. That's the website that we were just at. To register and become a member is $105, but when you register and become a member, you get a $150 discount off of the exam. So, you save $45. So it is actually worth it. You automatically make money off of it. Plus, if you become a member, you get a free digital copy of the PMBOK. I didn't really use the PMBOK at all to study, but it's good to have. It's good to reference in the future. So once you register at PMI.org, you're going to go ahead and fill out your application. You're going to need your transcripts from your school or whatever certifications you got from your online courses, and you're going to submit that in your application. They need the dates and everything, the course names, all that good stuff. Again, make sure the courses that you put on there are consistent with the PMP exam content. And then once you finish that portion up, that's really not a big deal. That's pretty easy. The next portion is the experience, and I'll just show you here on this slide kind of what you're going to be looking at. Once you put in, your basic contact information, your education, this is what's going to take up most of your time. It's the experience worksheet. You have to put down every single project that you want to get credit for and the number of hours in each phase of the project. So there's 5 phases, right? You have initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and finally closing. You basically have to break your projects down into how many hours you did each of those phases. So it's tedious, and again, if you're doing 7,500 hours of project management experience on your experience worksheet, it's going to take you a long time. So but you don't want to slack off on this, because if your application isn't really thorough, it's going to get denied. So you really want to spend a lot of time on this and make sure it's good to go. So here's an example. Somebody had submitted 2. And then you have to put in the dates for the project too. So that's how they figure out if it's overlapping or if it counts towards that 3 or 5 year requirement. So let me go back a slide. We'll get into the experience portion because it's pretty in depth. But whatever you're putting on your application, make sure that it is a project. You guys should know the definition of a project. It's very specific, especially with the PMP. You want to say that you led projects, you managed projects, not that you supported. And then you want to make sure you have good, solid descriptions, as I said, broken out into the different phases. So let's see, let's go back here real quick. Here we go. So this is what I was looking for. Obviously, you want to validate when you're doing your experience portions that you perform the role of project manager. Again, led and directed cross-functional teams to deliver, schedules, budgets, scope. Applied suitable approach to managing the project, just whatever methodology you used. And then when you actually describe your project experience, again, this is what they want to see. They want to see a brief summary of the objective, and then you want to break out all the deliverables by process area in a very specific way. And then you can do a 1 sentence at the end with the project outcome. If it was on schedule, it was on budget, or if it was, ahead of schedule. And I'll show you some examples of that here in a second. So another key thing to do is obviously make sure you use the word project in your title. Seems kind of obvious, but it just makes it sound like more of a project, I guess. Already stated, have an objective, deliverables, and an outcome. When you're filling out the description portion, you must list which process groups your deliverables and activities fall into. So you can only use 500 characters per description, so it's very short. So you need to, use as much as you can. And the way to do that is to abbreviate the different process groups. So IN for initiating, PL for planning, EX for execution, MC for monitoring and controlling, and then CL for closing. So for example, as a project manager, I analyzed work performance data in order to identify deviations and issued change requests as needed. I also monitored communications and stakeholder engagement, which are all monitoring and controlling processes. So that's what that MC in parentheses is for. You want to make sure when you're doing your descriptions that you're using PMI terminology. I know there's a lot of different jobs out there that use different terminology for the same thing, but just make sure you use PMI terminology. Look at the different process groups and the words that they use, and that's what you want to go off of. So here's an example. The project title, Install Carpet Project. Objective, install new carpet in a 40,000 square foot headquarters facility. So you don't want to get descriptive about what the project is, just the basics. You don't have to get into why or any of that nonsense. And then deliverables, again, very specific. As PM, I developed and obtained approval for the project charter. That's a PMI term, but there's other names for it out there. And then after what the deliverable is, you put which process group it falls into. I defined the scope, created the WS, the work breakdown schedule, sequenced activities, estimated activity durations and costs, and developed a procurement management plan. Those are all planning processes, so you put the PL at the end. I conducted procurements, selected sellers, directed project work, and performed quality assurance. Those are executing. I managed change requests and controlled procurements by closing procurements and produced work performance information. Again, these are all just PMI terms from all the different processes. The inputs, the tools, the outputs all go in here. Project was completed on schedule and on budget. So again, you have to try and fit as much as you can, cram as much as you can into 500 characters, and it's not easy. All right, project title, it's I didn't put it on here, but it's upgrade 14 aircraft hangars. Objective, install new HVAC system and lighting in 14 aircraft hangars. So again, very short, easy, basic objective. Deliverables, as PMI performed key stakeholder analysis. Again, initiating. Developed the stakeholder engagement plan, collected requirements, created the scope baseline, and developed a project schedule. Planning. I led and developed the team performing the work tasks and managed communications. Those are executing processes. And then I produced work performance reports, managed changes to the scope, schedule, and costs. Those are all monitoring and controlling processes. Lastly, I closed the project and documented lessons learned. Closing. The project was completed ahead of schedule. Again, you don't have to put the outcome in there if you don't want to. It's actually optional, but if you can fit it, then you might as well put it in. Again, you want to use PMI terminology, and where to get all those terms that you're looking for to make it sound, correct, is in the PMBOK. So you just go in there, you look through all the different outputs, the deliverables, and those are the terms that you're going to use. Once you get all that done, you have your education information in there, you have your experience information in there. It's time to actually submit the application. Once you submit it, it takes about 5 to 10 days to either get approved or denied, or if you're lucky enough, like me, you're gonna get audited. I believe it's around 5 to 10% of applicants get audited, and it's definitely a pain in the butt. But they basically want to verify your project management experience by taking your experience application. They convert it into a PDF, and they ask you to go get it signed by either a senior manager or a project manager that worked with you on the project, or even a colleague that has intimate knowledge of the project. So whoever signs it has to know what the project was. They have to be intimately familiar with it. And what they do is they sign your experience application, and they put it in an envelope, they seal it, and then they sign the back of it, and then they give it back to you. So you're not going to see if they concur with your description or not. And then you verify 35 hours of PM education. That's easy. You just print out your certificate and you include it with the envelope. And then you need to verify your formal education if you have any. And that is easy. You just get your diploma, make a copy, and then you put all that together in one envelope and you mail it to PMI. You have 90 days to do all of this. So if you bust a 90-day suspense, you have to go through the whole application process again. And they will audit you again, basically. So you can't just wait 90 days and then redo it and then hope you don't get audited. Once you're in the system as being audited, you're going to get audited again. So finally, once you get everything submitted, it's time to study. If you get denied, if you keep getting denied for some reason, it's because of your descriptions. My audit actually failed the first time I sent it in, and I didn't break it down like this the first time. I just kind of wrote it as a narrative. Hey, I did this project, and I did, the scope, and I did the cost estimates and all this stuff. I didn't break it down into specific phases like initiating. These deliverables were for planning. These deliverables were for executing, and so on. You have to break it down. And again, just use the abbreviations. You don't want to waste space by using the whole entire word. So now it's time to study. You could probably study for 2 months, if you're really committed and get it done. Or even a month. I've heard of people studying for a few weeks and getting it done. But this is the book I recommend. The PMP exam, this is what I used. I read it like 4 times and then I just took the test. It's a lot of information, a lot of memorization, but it's doable. Just study, just read. Again, this is what I used to study. The 35-hour contact hours course I went through is based off of the same thing. So, they're tied together. That was just for the education contact hours. This is what I actually used to study. So it's a pretty thick book, but there's a lot of space on the side to write notes. So this book is great, and it really breaks it down. It's Andy Crow, who's the author, and then for each section he has a little video. So it's a really great book. I bought it on Amazon for like $60. Definitely worth it. And this is really what I use for everything. So I highly recommend it. So once you get your application through and you've studied and you're ready to take the exam, it's time to pay. Again, it's $405 for PMI members and it's $555 for non-members. Once you pay, you'll go through Prometric to schedule your exam. And this is kind of important. It breaks down what percentages they're testing you on. The exam is a 4-hour exam, 200 questions, but only 175 count because 25 of them are like test questions for future exams. So here's a quick breakdown of the percentages, how many questions come out of each section. So obviously it's very heavy on planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling. Planning and executing have the most processes, so that makes sense. Initiating and closing, it's not a lot of stuff. There's actually only one closing process, and I think 2 initiating processes. So it's not a lot for those. So again, take your exam through Prometric. It's a 4-hour exam, and then the good thing is you get your score right away before you leave the test room, and then you just wait. You don't get a score though. What they do is they give you a printout and they tell you kind of where you fall as far as does not meet, meets, and it'll tell you where you fall on this line. So I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but that'll tell you if you passed or not. Pretty simple. And then you wait like a week or 2 and you get your certificate in the mail. And then you have to maintain your PMP certification. Once you get all that done, you need to maintain your PMP certification. There's a couple ways you can do this. If you look at the PMI website, you can either do courses. So it's I believe 60 PDUs every 3 years, which is 20 PDUs per year, 20 hours basically. Continuing education. So you can just take courses, organized meetings, or online and digital media, reading. There's a whole bunch of ways you can do it through the education course. There's also ways to earn by giving back. So creating content, giving presentations, sharing knowledge. There's a ton of ways. As long as you document it and log it, they'll count it. So we hit on the eligibility, what you need. You need the education plus the number of hours based on your education level. The application process, go to PMI.org, register, become a member so you can get a discount on the test. Fill in all the contact information, submit your education, and then start filling out the experience worksheet, which takes a bit of time. You submit your application, get your determination within 5 to 10 days. Then it's time to hit the books and study. So there's various exams out there, study programs, all kinds of stuff, but I prefer just to read the PMP, pass the PMP on your first try, and that worked for me. And then schedule your test through Prometric. You'll actually do it through PMI.org, but they'll just redirect you to Prometric. And then obviously you'll maintain your PMP certification. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you guys next time.